All right. Hey guys, Esther here, and this is another episode of Recognize and Manage Your Level of Crazy with EQ. And today we're going to talk to my new friend John, who is going to help us understand astronomy. And what prompted this video is that I know the lighting is not the best. We are here outside his home, and we are looking at the stars and the moon, and he has this beautiful, amazing telescope, super high tech. And what prompted this video was realizing when you look at these things, when you look at the moon and the stars and the different planets, you realize just how small we are. Just how small we are on this planet and on this universe, and to realize the things that we're fighting about, and to realize the things that we are so busy keeping our minds occupied with are so insignificant when you really realize what we're doing here. So John is going to give us a little bit of an astronomy lesson, and so John, tell us a little bit about yourself first. How did you get into astronomy?
Well, I've always been interested in the stars and science fiction when I was a kid. And so I was reading about the planets and the stars, you know, the little prince traveling to different places. And since I was a little kid, in Star Trek, when Star Trek first began, I was there, you know. And so I've always been interested. I've always been interested in science. So astronomy has been there, but I would get a pair of binoculars, then I'd get a stronger pair, and finally I said, well, it's time to graduate into telescopes.
Nice.
So I've had a number of different telescopes. I had one that was a 14-inch that was this big and pretty wide around, but it was too heavy for me to even move. Now, my situation here in Coconut Creek is that I'm surrounded by trees and houses. So that's one of the reasons that I couldn't use the 14-inch very well, because I couldn't align. You needed 2 or 3 stars, and I couldn't find 2 or 3 stars that were bright enough to align to. So I got this smaller telescope, and so I'm going to put a red light on this so you can see it. So this is an 8-inch diameter. It's a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope made by Celestron. So it has a number of attachments. So this is a Star Sense Auto Align. It's a camera that sits on it. It's coordinated with the telescope, so it'll look up, it'll look at stars, and then it will align to the sky.
Nice.
So with this control down here, I can tell it to go to the moon, to Saturn, and it will align pretty well. Now this over here is called a Telrad, which is a finder. So if this doesn't work, then I can use the Telrad to help me find things in the sky.
Awesome.
So right now we're looking at the moon. And
Yeah.
So unfortunately there's a lot of clouds coming over. But it's great to look at the moon. And people would think that the best time to look at the moon is when it's full, and that's really not the case. Because when the moon is full, you're looking at all those craters head on. And so you don't get as many shadows. So when it's a thin crescent, even up to halfway, you can get more shadows, and it's more interesting to look at the moon when you have a crescent like that. So I have different eyepieces. So this is a 40mm eyepiece. So with this eyepiece over here, I'll put a light on it again. So this is the 40 millimeter, so you can see pretty much the whole moon. Not quite. It's a little bit too strong to see the whole moon. So with other eyepieces, you can really zoom in. And they have this thing called the Barlow, which will double the power of the eyepiece. So you can really zoom in. And I mean, you can't quite see anybody walking on the moon if they were there, but you can really zoom in close to those craters. Now over there, that's Jupiter. I don't know if you can see it. The brightest thing in the sky, of course, is the sun. After that, the moon. The next after that is Venus. So Venus is close to the sun, so you'll see Venus when it's up, sometimes when it comes up before the sun in the morning, or sets after the sun sets, and you'll see Venus in the sky very bright. And it goes through phases, like the moon goes through phases. but you can't really see it with your own eye. You need to use a telescope or maybe some powerful binoculars to see the different phases of Venus. Now that's Jupiter. That's the next brightest thing after Venus in the sky. So when we look at Jupiter through the telescope, you'll see the storm bands that are going around. This is a storm that's been going on for I don't know how long. And if you have a really good telescope, you can see the red spot, which is another storm that's swirling around on Saturn. This telescope, if you have a camera that you take astronomy photography or astrophotography, then you can process it and you get really, really good pictures. But I don't do that. I like to look at it through the eyepiece, not through a screen. Because, you know, if you want to see it through a screen, you can see pictures from the Hubble Space Telescope or the James Webb Telescope. You can do that anytime. But to see it with your own eye through the eyepiece, I think that's the coolest thing. And so when you look at Jupiter, you can see the 4 Galilean moons. You'll see, I think it's Io, Callisto, Europa, and Ganymede. I think those are the 4. And so right now you can see them if you look at it.
Yeah. You know, I looked at them. It's pretty phenomenal. It's amazing to see how they're just hanging there. It's almost like you wonder if there's a string, you know, something that's connecting them all, keeping them in place. But the truth is, that's the magical part about it, is that they're just hanging there on their own with this magic force that holds it all together. And let me ask you, you know, you're in this world, you're all about this, you study this, you know, probably a lot. So how do you feel about it? Like, what does it make you think about when you look at the stars like that, when you look at the planets from an emotional, psychological, spiritual perspective?
Well, it's hard to describe. Spiritually, as Baha'i, I feel part of the whole universe. Like Baha'u'llah said, all the fixed stars have their own planets, and all the planets have life without measure that no man can count. And so, you know, you look up into the sky and you see the sky right now is full of clouds, and we have a lot of light pollution here. But imagine, like when I lived in Ecuador, I worked on shrimp farms, and I would go out at night with my little lounge chair, my binoculars, and my Oreo cookies, and I'd look up into the sky and I'd see the entire Milky Way, and just, you know, every once in a while you'd see an asteroid go by or a meteor, and you see all these incredible views, and you feel that, you know, we are very insignificant. When you see pictures of the Milky Way galaxy, we're at one edge of the Milky Way galaxy on one of the arms, sort of like these spiral arms that come out. And we're way out there, very tiny, very insignificant, but we're all made of stardust. You know, we've all come from the same, they say Big Bang, and through the eons of time that have gone by, all those materials have made us. We're part of it. We're part of the same material as the stars. And we've evolved into intelligent creatures, so we have developed more. And it's incredible that we have this consciousness, and the stars, the planets that we see, they have no consciousness. They can't disobey the laws of gravitation that keep them swinging around their stars. But we, as humans, we can obey the laws of creation or disobey. Mm-hmm. In other words, we can live together in harmony or disharmony. Mm-hmm. And so it's up to us. We have this free will. We have this choice. Mm-hmm. And so we have to take the reins in our hands, like Arjuna. Remember Arjuna in the chariot in Hinduism? Mm-hmm. He took control of the chariot and stopped his chariot and realized that we're all in this war that's raging around us. Mm-hmm. And we can make peace. Right. Just like it says in all the different religions, that we can live together in peace and harmony. But it takes an effort. Yeah.
And what is this Baha'i that you mentioned? Because we never mentioned it. I was here for a meeting for Baha'i faith. And what is Baha'i? Tell us really quick.
The word Baha'i means a follower of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah, translated into English, means the glory of God. So Baha'u'llah is the latest of a series of divine messengers or manifestations of God that have come throughout history, like Jesus, like Muhammad, like Buddha, Zoroaster, and others that have come. So Baha'u'llah is not the last of this succession of messengers. He's the latest, the one for this age. And so his life was a life of imprisonment, exile for over 40 years. And during those times that he suffered so greatly in prison in the Ottoman Empire in the 1800s, he revealed, we say, over 100 volumes of new teachings. And these teachings, once we study them and put them into practice, will unite the whole world and create the world into a paradise. Now, many times when I've said that to people, they have three objections. One, oh, that's going to take a long time. Yes, it'll take time. But time goes on.
Right.
And it's something, we work on now, we work on for our children, for our grandchildren, and it's something we need to do. We can't just let it stay the way it is now with everyone fighting and killing and all these things.
Now, can we make that go faster by choosing to do good deeds and by doing the right thing?
Absolutely. If we all start dropping our weapons, as the Christians say, to beat the swords into plowshares, right? We drop our weapons, and I know that's so difficult to do in America, to drop weapons, to not use weapons, and stop creating weapons and start using our brains, our minds, to do construction, to construct buildings of worship, buildings of science, buildings for research. I did over 20 years of research at the University of Florida. And these are things that everyone can do. Everyone can expand their minds, study science, develop, look for better things for mankind instead of this destruction. It's so easy to destroy a house with a missile. I mean, a house that maybe took, or a building that took years and years to create. Right. In 1 second, it's gone with a missile.
Exactly.
We don't have to live like that.
Right. So yeah, it's pretty amazing, and you see this whole conversation began with John offering to take out the telescope and showing us a couple of stars and a couple of planets, and here we got the message that what, it's up to each of us. It's up to each of us to continue to do the right thing, to continue to evolve, to continue to drop the ego and work on the challenger, as I've mentioned many times before, this challenger inside of us that makes it all about the other, blaming the other. And truthfully, yeah, sometimes, there are evil doers in the world, of course, right? We know that. We know that there's evil doers, but we can also choose locally with new friends, old friends, family, to continue to do the right thing. So with that, guys, thank you so much for joining. And we're going to get back to following some planets. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, get a telescope. If you haven't gotten one, it's really not that expensive. Get a telescope.
Nice. Those are the wise words of the famous John. Thanks, guys. And as always, when you know and understand yourself, the world will know and understand you too. And what's the best that can happen? Okay, guys, take care. Bye.